Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer. Man, I'm recording this like 3:30 in the afternoon, but daylight saving kicked in California, and you can see it's already getting kind of dark. Should maybe open the blinds before I actually start answering the questions. Sorry for the lack of 5.1 stuff this week. I don't really have any excuses. It's just been kind of a bad situation this last week. Any of you who've kept up with everything that's been going on, California did some power shutoffs in order to help prevent the wildfires that were going nuts, and we still had a few big ones even regardless. I then had to fly to San Diego and be accommodated by OP Group, a talent management studio for streamers and people like T-Pain, and they let me use their studio for the 5.1 launch, but I didn't have any of my normal stuff to actually do any of the work that I normally get done, so I didn't go home till Thursday afternoon, and on that Thursday afternoon I was actually trialing for an ultimate group that I got into, and then Friday and Saturday we had raid nights, so I basically, and State of the Realm on Saturday, so it's just been nuts. It's been unfortunate that all this stuff kind of happened right around 5.1. I was all set to have all the time in the world to do it, and that's just not how circumstances worked out. I'll probably put that in writing under whatever videos I do in the next few days, but I do have all the normal stuff in the works at this point. Just no time to sit down and actually do it. That being said, we have a Q&A to do, and that didn't get done last week for the same reason, because of the power shutoff. So let's get to it. Thanks to our patrons for supporting the channel. In fact, I just saw a new one pop up in my email right as I was starting this video. And I'm starting to recontemplate the way that I go about doing the patron stuff. I want it to be, again, I feel like it's just not enough what I'm doing right now. And I know that I got feedback about changing it to a scrolling list, but I feel like there's still more that can be done. So I'm thinking of at least adding in a monthly shout out on top of the list, but I'm just letting you guys know what my current thought process is. Yeah, I did have a new one. I had Cosmopolitic. So thank you for the elite tier patron. Of course, we have our patrons of darkness, Khuja Cross on Jenova and Kurenai Oni as well, who have been awesome and massive supporters, regardless of power shutdowns or anything. All of you clicking on the video, all the patrons of darkness, all been awesome, so it's definitely kept me going through some pretty frustrating times. That being said, we've got questions to answer, and then we can probably get into some more 5.1 relevant ones now that this will be coming out, you know, a week before Ultimate. But yeah, I'd say we should probably get started. Alright, well, the light is a little bit better, but it's all coming from one side, so whatever. At least I tried. So we have our first question, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, me again. Hope you've been having a great week and that your day is excellent as can be. It's getting better now that things are a little bit more settled than they were. So on to my question, or questions may or may not involve spoilers. So I haven't actually taken a peek at how many questions there are, but keep in mind I'd at least like to try and limit it to one as per last week. Where I barely had enough time to do any of that stuff. So just keep that in mind. Also, this is screwed up compared to last week. Whoop. Squeeze that in real quick. So, with the new raid coming out, how do you feel about the way content was integrated into 14? Do you think it was integrated well? They could have been better. I think it's too early to say. From an aesthetic standpoint, nothing really is too far out there. I mean, even the whole, you know, androids being on the first thing, it's not really too much of a surprise. You know, a dragon and a giant machine fought a war on a distant planet and flew to Hyperion and, you know, became residents here, one willingly, one unwillingly. Like, we travel between dimensions that are alternate versions of our original world, which is the source. And there's like crazier things have happened, but also nothing really happens in the first Nier raid. Like, we just get a few nods to some characters, to some designs that were around. We put the foundations down, and saying whether or not it's worked is I'm both unable to do it, and it's kind of irrelevant because it does its job as a fan servicey thing. I won't really be fully convinced of projects like this where we take outside games and try to integrate them into our lore until I see the finished project. And I do know, you know, what people are theorizing based on Nier Automata and even some other parts of Nier and Drakengard that have popped up. But it's too early to say. So that's unfortunately the best thing I've got. Now, I will take the second question, but I am going to be a little bit hesitant about follow-up questions. I should actually take a quick peek and see how many questions there are this week. Since we had some time to deal with the new changes, how about the changes to Ninja? I love it. I'm leveling it now. It'll be 80 tomorrow. I've got a thoughts video planned for that. I love new ninja. It's so good. As for the ranged roll, I think the ranged rolls could still probably use a little bit of help, but it's certainly in a better spot than it was. I think the big problem child right now is summoner, which even the people who are enjoying its overpoweredness probably agree that it wasn't intended to be as strong as it is, and it's until they nerf it, it's definitely going to be the #1 caster in a lot of people's eyes for quite some time. But I'm going to wait for some more FF logs information to come out and to see if there's any sort of problem with ACT that's causing Summoner to look like it's that crazy, but I have a feeling that Summoner just got that crazy. All right, next one. Hello, Mr. Happy. Thank you for all your content. I hope you and yours are staying safe from the wildfires, coping a lack of electricity. Yeah, well, now I am. Now we are. So thank you. I haven't been able to get a definitive answer. Can Ultimate be cleared more than once per week for drops? So upon its initial release, no. Once per week upon your initial clear, you will be given a totem, and one totem can be traded in for a weapon. So every single person every week guarantees one weapon. Eventually they unlock that, and if you want to kill it tons of times back to back to back and collect any of the remaining weapons, then you can. But until then, it will be once per week, and that totem is the only drop that there is. Of course, the achievement in the title for clearing it, but that only matters on the first kill. All right, next question, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Happy. The Senate being longer than I thought, so I'll add a TLDR. Do you think that too much emphasis is placed on how hardcore players view jobs and or roles whenever those opinions, like for instance, healing is too easy or boring, don't really apply to a vast majority of the player base? I will take a quick peek, because I didn't read ahead. I recently watched an episode of Mog Talk. By the way, if you guys are watching this and you watch State of the Realm Mog Talk, another fantastic Final Fantasy XIV podcast run by Frosty TV, who we've had on State of the Realm a number of times. Also, I've been meaning to catch up on Duelcast now that Drac and Larry have got that working. The topic was the state of healing with Shadowbringers with Momo, ISA, and Crystal, and the general consensus between them that it's generally in a bad place. The healing potential of each job was increased significantly, while their DPS options were stripped away, with overall damage output from the encounters remaining relatively the same, which in their view made healing far too easy and boring. However, the casual and mid-core player base who play White Mage, I find their view in the role only applies to the hardcore player base. So I kind of have an idea of where your source is coming from, and I have seen that exact episode of Mog Talk, so it actually works out. So here's the thing. At any level other than the most hardcore level, having a discussion about a job's efficiency almost becomes kind of a non-discussion. Because if you're not playing it at that highest level, then yes, in what you're saying, it doesn't really matter, but it's also just not even like a comparable conversation. You know, I think that what matters the most is that a player who plays at like a casual to mid-core level, who doesn't have an in-depth understanding of a job or a role or their functions inside of cutting-edge content, they're free to have an opinion, they're free to feel a certain way about a job, whether or not it's accurate. No one's saying they can't feel that way, but whether or not that's an actual truth, I'd say does still fall into the role of the hardcore. It's why we have the trickle-down effect in any sort of online game, where those who do the most work, those who do the math, those who do the raids, those who do anything that kind of qualifies them for an opinion on a higher level, it trickles down and other people use it as gospel instead of looking at individual situations and considering individual players' skill. It becomes a blanket excuse to act a certain way. But that doesn't kind of change the fact that the people who can play a job close to its maximum, no doubt, have the best understanding of how those jobs are functioning, how they're being compared to other jobs, and how they affect the raid scene, or how the raid scene has evolved as a whole. But you're right that it's not relevant to a lot of people. And a lot of people take it in such a way that they don't really use the information properly. FF Logs is a pretty big example of that, of information that in the past has been used very, very improperly. It's gotten a lot better, though, due to changes that have actually popped up there. So, with that in mind, I think I don't really have any more in-depth of an answer to give. So, hopefully that was adequate. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, a long-time listener, first-time asker, have a bonus Endless Eureka 2.0 upgrade materials and glowing primal weapons for Dancer Gunbreaker. Pretty happy with my weapons so far, especially the Hades weapons, which I think look really good overall. Do you think FF Log should have a potency per second calculation? As a person who doesn't do Savage content, I'm frequently behind others when it comes to the item level of my main and secondary jobs. Ranking players by potency per second in addition to DPS, adult players compare themselves to those who have different item levels. So what you're saying is, if somebody is doing a certain amount of potency per second, that regardless of their item level, it has, it can give you an implication of what an optimal amount of potency per second is. I think that can be useful information for somebody who is looking, because the people who do hardcore math do generally look at it in a potency per second standpoint. They don't just look at how much DPS did I do, because with direct hit and crit variants, at best you put it into a calculation and get what it would be in a vacuum or completely ideal circumstance. Whereas actual potency per second gives you an unbiased, un-RNG metric by which to measure. So I think if ACT can properly parse that, which I don't know if it can. I mean, at the very least, it could take all the actions and a database could be made that registers the current patch's potency on each individual skill and how many times it was cast. I'm sure there's some other problems with maybe calculating that, but this is something that would be useful if players were looking to it and thinking about it. But DPS is what a lot of people look at, so it's rough, because I think you have a point. I just don't know how well FFlogs can actually retrieve that information without a lot of outside parts that, you know, aren't just a part of uploading directly from ACT to there. And I don't know how much other people would use it, but it's a good idea. Maybe one day. They did our DPS, and that's simulated to some degree, so maybe one day. All right, next question. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. First time asking, third time trying. I don't know what that means. How's it going? It's going all right. It's going better now. I'm just curious, why did you name your cat Aloha? I didn't. That was his given name when we adopted him from a cat cafe in San Diego. I wanted to name him Dwayne the Cat Johnson, which is why now his name is officially Aloha Dwayne the Cat Johnson, plus mine and my girlfriend's last name. It's great whenever we go to the vet, and because his insurance has Aloha Dwayne the Cat Johnson, they always call him, because he has two first names, by Aloha Dwayne anytime we go to the vet. And every time I just look at my girlfriend, I go, yes, yes. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. How are you doing? I'm doing okay. Hello to you too. Nah, I'm just giving you a hard time. The way they have raid gear is by role. Do you think they will ever do it by job? No. If they do, what do you think about having job-specific glamours to give jobs a unique look to go along with their unique feel? I mean, we have that. We get that once or twice, and I think 2 or 3 times in expansion we usually get some unique appearances, usually from the Relic quest line or something along those lines. That being said, no, there's no way they'll do that. I mean, even with the coffers we have now, you could argue that they will, but it's not just about the coffers kind of fixing the problem with having too many different gear sets, because for years prior to coffers, the fact that Ninja was the only scouting job, and Monk was the only striking job prior to Samurai, and then we had the one only maiming job. And then we had aiming, which, you know, Ninja was borrowing aiming accessories, competing with the range roll, but still had its own scouting left side. It's like, it's created so many issues over the years. But now that we have coffers, the main reason they won't do it is because they cannot possibly make that much armor. They cannot promise that level of quality for every different raid tier for how many jobs do we have now? I think 17 or something off the top of my head. Sorry, Blue Mage. There's no way they could do that for every single raid tier, because as soon as they start doing it for that, they also have to deal with the problem of everyone's going to want it for everything. They're going to be like, well, why not dungeon gear? Why not PvP gear? Like, it's a cascading effect, and I think they know that if they ever commit to just doing too many job-specific sets, anytime they don't do one, it's going to be a major disappointment for people. I don't think they can keep up with the workload. I don't think they want to have that cascading effect. I don't think they ever do it. All right, next. How long am I into this? Oh, damn, because I've trucked through quite a few questions. I've barely even started. Hey, Haps, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. First time asker here. Recently, I went to upgrade a piece of my tombstone gear, and I meant to upgrade my feet, but I accidentally upgraded my legs, which it didn't need. Feel pretty stupid. Don't worry, we've all been there before. What'd you think about an option to unupgrade and get your upgradable material back? This was the first Savage raid tier I've actually gotten all the way through, and I'm almost fully geared. Now I just feel like I'm even more behind. Well, you're not really that far behind. First of all, keep in mind that you get weekly stuff now for upgrades from Yorha. On top of that, you can always do hunts to get another piece to replace it. So it's not that big of a deal. And it's still one more raid week before Ultimate comes out. So you have to consider that too. As for your idea, this is not something that we've touched on in a while, but it was a topic a few expansions ago here on Mondays with Mr. Happy, where somebody said, like, what if there was a limited period of time where you could exchange your armor back for a full refund? And yours is basically asking that. I was okay with it. There were some abuse cases, but the number one example given wasn't even what you just suggested, which was a screw up. The discussion back then was that players who start gearing up one job, they plan to raid on a job, but then they get a raid group and they want to change the job that they're playing, and they need a different gear set altogether because now they have nothing and they have to start over, and they still have to worry about being Bis by, you know, an early enough time to get to ultimate or get to the next raid tier. And that was when the discussion actually began. But your idea is just as much a viable one. I'm okay with like a temporary time frame, but it needs to be something that's a limited time frame. It can't just always be there, otherwise it's very abusable, and I don't think Square Enix would quite enjoy that. You could also, by the way, I think you get 3 total item restorations if you actually contact the GM and tell them you made a mistake. I think they can do it up to 3 times where they fix it for you, but I don't know what the status is on that because I haven't heard anyone do that in quite some time. Alright, next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays, greetings and salutations, hello to you as well. I hope you're doing well, Haps, long time viewer, first time asker, welcome. There was a question that you responded to in a previous hashtag Mrhappy Mondays, it got me thinking, I like that you used it 2 times, by the way, that's nice. It got me thinking about the design of dungeons overall as expansions and patches progress. It was something I never really thought about until you had mentioned it, but dungeons nowadays are becoming more linear compared to the dungeons from the earlier days. They have more of a labyrinth type format, such as Hawk Manor, or even the illusion of a labyrinth. The name escapes me. Probably like the one with the floating bad eye that does an AoE but you can't touch till the actual boss encounter. Oh, Darkhold. It has like a bunch of dead ends in it. Yeah. That's Zamiel Darkhold. My question is, how do you feel or prefer the style of dungeons compared to the style or layout of the ones we have now? Love your content. Keep up the amazing work. I'm kind of impartial. I think when it comes to doing it with complete strangers, there's points and times where I kind of desire both. There's points where I'm just like, oh my god, just go, just hurry up, let's get it done. And then there's times where I'm like, you know, if there's a good enough reason for me to go down that other way. Like, the one thing I've always wanted in 14 were dungeon quests, which rewarded EXP, you know, shareable ones or extra bosses that are worth a bunch of EXP. We've only ever seen one equivalent of a dungeon boss ever, if I'm not mistaken, and it's the 24-man. It's Dun Scaith when Ultima replaced the other, the previous mini-boss that was between the second and third boss. That's kind of the closest thing we have to a dungeon quest, really. And so, yeah, that's the only reason I think I'd prefer the other one, is if there were bonus bosses with bonus loot, especially if someone's trying to collect like the glamour pieces, then having that extra boss on the side could be pretty useful. Also, you know, another daily or weekly quest that people could use to help level up alternate jobs. I think for me, the way the game is designed now, I would prefer it to just be linear, but if they gave me a tantalizing enough reason to go down one of those hallways, such as a dungeon quest, I would be more open to it if a tank had it, or any of my pugs. I'd be like, I'm not going to tell that guy we can't do his quest. Yeah, let's go do it. Sure, why not? I like this one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hashtag one question. I like it. I like letting me know. Long-time listener, 3.0. First-time asker. Ooh, it's about time then. Have a bonus of the next tombstone come out, because I'm sure you're capped on Goshas like I am. I spend them on Alchemix and sell them. I make like 100-something K every time I cap my Goshas. I'm a dancer main. I've been doing well in this raid tier. Been trying to do better with my performance and DPS, but I'm starting to not know what to do. I've been to the bounce, implementing almost as much of my rotations, seen any noticeable improvements. But where do I go from here to get better? I'm looking specifically beyond balance stuff. Thanks. So you've given me a lot of generalities, and so I can't. I don't know what your average DPS is. That wasn't provided. I don't know what fights you've completed. I don't know what your point is. Like, you could be doing just EX primals and not doing Savage, for example, and then it becomes harder to judge where, you know, on a fight-to-fight basis, like where you could do general improvements. What things you've absorbed from the balance. I haven't read the balance section of Dancer, and I don't know how much of it you've absorbed and how much of it you've integrated. There's a few little things you can do on Dancer. Trying not to ever be overcapped on Esprit, and also trying to make sure that during burst windows that aren't just your technical step, you are making sure to burn through resources, especially if you're overcapped. You know, it's not a bad idea if you see a trick attack to, you know, throw your flourish out there, get your flourish GCDs, get a saber dance, get some fan dances in, because that 5% bonus is going to come every minute, and it'll be there for your next technical step anyway. You usually end up with so many things during your subsequent burst windows with technical step that, yeah, it doesn't really hurt to, you know, between, you know, every minute to just throw out a bunch of resources. You'll have a minute to get the majority of them back, assuming that the fight doesn't have any downtime. So considering that, I'd say a big thing for Dancer is definitely to not just look at your own burst windows, and this actually goes for every other job. Look at what other burst windows are coming up that you can make use of. Is there a Dragoon tether that isn't that isn't lining up with anything else, but you have a few things that would definitely line up with it. You know, throw a few extra things out there. Depends on the job, it depends on the jobs you're playing with, but being conscious of that leads to some pretty vast improvements. Also, making sure that, you know, as fun as it is to whip all around as Dancer, making sure you understand when you need to be in melee range for Flourish, and you don't actually lose any of your Flourish GCDs, you don't overcap on Fan Dances, or you don't accidentally use Flourish while Fan Dance 3 is up, or, you know, you're sitting at 100 Esprit for Saber Dance. Another little thing you can do is, if the group is ever stacked up, remember to use improvisation. I know sometimes people just jump around and it's annoying as hell, but even sometimes you can just pop it in between a GCD if everyone's stacked up tightly and just get that extra little Esprit. Sometimes you can even get 20 when you're doing that, because improv is actually incredibly responsive compared to some of the other, you know, in-between GCD style skills, or at least some of the ones that used to exist and now are on the GCD as a 5.1. So yeah, it's just more general advice. I don't know if the balance says those things. I don't know if you've already absorbed them. I'm working without a lot of information here, so that's the best I got. Next question, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy, long-time listener, first-time asker. Have a bonus of another trip to Japan. Yeah, I'd love that. That's a hell of a bonus, but that ain't on the docket anytime soon, especially after that little bonus San Diego trip that we just had in order to do 5.1 stuff. Question, now that Blue can be level 60, we'll be able to go into Palace of the Dead. Thanks for all your hard work and keep it up. No. So we actually don't know the answer to this question, but the fact they've said nothing to me is a hard confirmation we won't be able to do it. It is number one on my checklist of things I feel Blue Mage needs to be able to do. I think it needs to be able to do deep dungeons, or it needs to be some sort of content for them that's like that. It's literally prime for them. So the fact that it hasn't even been brought up is just like, I'm not really, I'm gonna do an updated Blue Mage video but right before Blue Mage releases in 5.15, the level 60 cap, and afterwards, because I said that I still stand to this opinion, I really enjoyed the Blue Mage experience 250. I enjoyed, you know, hunting down the spells, even if it was sometimes frustrating, and I enjoyed the Mass Carnival, but it wasn't nearly enough, and level 60 isn't really looking to do much more. You know, more Mass Carnival, more spells, more leveling. And the Blue Mage log, which, you know, I mean, it's not something I'm probably gonna hard commit to doing like a lot. I don't know. I'm kind of lukewarm. I'm more lukewarm about it now than I was when I played it the first time. So I don't think it's going to be able to do Palace of the Dead, and if it can't, that's going to be a huge disappointment for me. Next question, hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. What up, Haps? Root here from Twitch. What's up? I hear you spitting coding terms periodically. Spaghetti Go developers. Developer isn't a coding term. You can't go with that. Come on, man. You can't do that. Builds, releases, bugs, features, fixes. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that's even just MMO jargon, or even online game jargon. Like, that's not even really, that's not like, you know when you know the difference between someone who's at least done some coding versus someone who's done nothing? When you say high level in regards to like any sort of, I guess this isn't even coding either. It's more like just, man, the words are escaping me right now. Basically, when some people think of high level, they think of like end game, or they think in depth. But when you're referring to a lot of like project management and stuff, high level means that it's a very basic, you know, it's almost at like the skin, and you haven't gone past that yet. So, but that's actually not even a coding term either. I don't know why I made that association to it, but yeah, that's not even one either. So for engineer, those are buzzwords used in daily vocabulary. You said buzzwords, there you go. Just wondering, do you have any coding experience, and what kind of programming languages do you like to use? So I haven't done any coding since college at all. I think they taught me Python, C++, Java, and C#. No, C# I had to learn on my own. I think those are all of them that I learned. I literally haven't used that knowledge in years. Like, I could probably sit down and actually write something if I wanted to, because it's pretty easy to understand. You know, the toughest thing that everyone in my class has dealt with was arrays, and I'm like, come on, you really can't do arrays? Like, it's not that hard to do an array. Making an array do exactly what you want it to do is another story, but like even just the core concept of what it was used for, like, escaped so many people in college. It was kind of depressing. That's why I left college, was because I felt like A, I wasn't learning anything, I was teaching myself all those things, and B, I felt like all the people around me gave no shit and or weren't learning it, and thus it was kind of demotivating for me when I was in college. By the way, go to college. Don't listen to me. Go to college. It's a good idea. But I haven't used any of that information in so many years. Not since doing a program, like a game programming course where I teamed up with someone and I actually did most pixel art for that. But we both did a little bit of programming in C# for that. He did the majority, and then I looked over things and started to make some modifications to, you know, get our project in a different spot, you know, because I just a second opinion kind of thing. But other than that, no, it's been so long. I could recognize it. I could probably write it, but I don't. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know what I'm doing on the back end with code. I just know how things work, not necessarily skilled enough to do. Oh, I did HTML and CSS too. That's not really coding, but it just came to mind. Yeah, so that's, I guess, the answer to the question. Next one, and I gotta start actually taking an assessment of how many questions there are, because I have a feeling there's still quite a few to scroll down to. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for the Mondays Q&A. I really like them. I'm glad you watch them. Otherwise, it'd be really depressing to make them if you didn't watch them. Question, do you think if there's any damage scaling in old 24-man, CT rates are level 50 synced, but not item level synced? Can the aggro order be used as sort of a DPS meter for red DPS, that is? So to answer the first question, they are synced down to the item level, the highest item level that was available at that level. So at level 50, that would be, I think, you know, I've never actually hard confirmed this, but I wonder if those are synced to 135 for the CT raids instead of 130, because the highest level armor that was available was 130, but the highest level weapons was 135. I think to other content where we have that information, like Ultimate, where it's synced to 345 and 375, and probably soon to be, you know, in a future patch, Alexander will probably be 475. And I wonder if that extra 5 item levels holds true in Crystal Tower. I'm sure someone probably has that information. I'd love to know, actually. So the context is that sometimes you were doing a Crystal Tower, tank didn't have aggro, people were competing for aggro, and you were saying the Dancer was like 5th or 6th, even though it was I-440, but the Dragoon was like 390 and the Machine was 235. What I'm getting from this context is what you've encountered is the people debuff. That's where you go into content with people you don't know, and you have people who, you know, whether or not they know how to play well or they've done it before, first time or whatever, there's just something that they do that's like just really hampering the experience. And that's when you get a people debuff, where sometimes you just can't trust. Sometimes there's just extra ads in the fight. You didn't even realize it till you got there. And it sounds like you're just experiencing a lot of that. Generally, the aggro list is a great way to determine aggro in a more structured format. In a 24-man, dude, there are so many people who don't give a shit. There are people, and mind you, there are people who play well. The majority of the people you see who do play well when they go into like endgame content like EX Primals or Savages or Ultimates, they still try to play well in those 24-mans if they're not just trolling for the sake of trying to get their brains through this in one piece, which, by the way, is a really shitty thing to do, and it really sucks when those people do that, because it just slows everything down, and it's kind of counterintuitive to the point, I feel. But that being said, those are always the people who you see, like, look at the ACT and be like, oh my god, I'm the healer, and I'm 3rd on DPS, behind 2 tanks, or something like that. Like, it's so common for people to just either not give a shit, and because they normally don't give a shit, and they just extra don't give a shit in the 24-man, or just, I don't know, it's depressing, man. People in 24-man's just, they pull bosses, they don't try, it's like, ugh. Luckily, I've had some pretty good ones in the last few weeks, so I guess they're trying more. Hey, I like it. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, hashtag bring back Aloha Mondays. He was just annoying the hell out of me before I started recording, and then I gave him some treats. I pet him a little bit. He did the cat thing. I hate when pets do this, where you're trying to walk into a room and they decide their only path they can walk is literally right in front of you, but they get right in front of you to the point where they actually are touching the front of your legs. You're trying to walk forward, so now you're trying not to trip and fall on them and hurt them a lot, but at the same time you're trying to like go a different path. But then it's like, you ever have a situation where they like follow you? He just did that. I was like, okay, oh, Aloha, move, please, because I had like walked into him a little bit. So I tried going to the left, and he ran around my left side and got in front of my left leg again. So then I tried to go right, and he did the same. I was like, Aloha, stop. And then finally he jumped up on the couch and gave up. But he went like this with one eye, and I'm like, did I hurt you? And then I gave him treats, and it was fine. So he was just fucking bullshitting me as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, what do you think of the release timing of Ultimates? Since they treat it as glamour content, Not really, but yeah, it makes sense to restrict access to relevant even-numbered patches to make it a bit to make it feel a bit exclusive. If they want to, the way they've been doing it is more like a desperate money grab tactic. Design it serious statics for the first 1 to 3 weeks and unsub. I don't know that I agree any of that opinion. I don't think releasing content. Now, I would like to remind you that Ultimates require the absolute best gear available. So, what do? They wait until the best gear is feasibly obtainable by groups that have been running Savage on the weekly. You even have to have beaten the previous Savage tier in order to get into the Ultimates. Also, it is worth mentioning the Ultimate weapon is the best weapon until the next patch. Not that it matters, because you've now beaten all of the content, and you will replace that weapon going into the next patch, which you can get a crafted one, most likely. That being said, it is not simply just glamour content. Also, I don't think that it needs to be made, if there's anything that needs to be made feel a bit exclusive. It is exclusive. It's already exclusive. You have to beat the most recent raid tier. You have to have the absolute best gear that's available at the time. You need to be one of the highest. It's as exclusive as content can really get. I don't know if changing it to an even-numbered patch would do anything for that at all. And then on top of that, the wait 1 to 3 weeks, they always do that. That's content staggering, because they don't want people to have to choose between content. So, well, people who do Ultimate probably also want to do the story, and maybe want to do the new EX Primal, or maybe want to have some time to do the Beast Tribes. But they know that content like Ultimate is going to consume the full 12 to 16 hours a day of the people who are going to do it for the first week. And making them make that choice really sucks for those individuals. So it is what it is. There needs to be enough time to get the gear, and there needs to be enough time to give you time to enjoy other things. So no, I don't know how it's a desperate money grab tactic, but I mean, you do you. Alright, so I actually scrolled through some of the remaining questions. I don't really have good answers for a lot of these remaining I have very quick and uninspired answers for there's one here that asks about Black Mage having a self-resurrection. Hell no. Although now with Summoner being as strong as it is, fuck it, why not if it ever stays there. If you think Red Mage Summoner res tax is ridiculous, I can't say Summoner's so OP right now, it's probably not intentional, but again, I don't have much in Red Mage. Yeah, probably. Let's see. How do you practice your job, develop good habits? I mean, you just said it. Practice the job and develop good habits. I mean, you do it the same way you do anything else. I don't. There's a romance option one. I don't care ever about romancing in games outside of Persona, and I only romance the adults in Persona 5 because it's weird to me in all the other games romancing high schoolers. And then there's an Ultimate one. What do you think about the final boss being all the bosses combined? I mean, that's probably what's gonna happen. In fact, I remember somebody mentioning to me that there was what's the word I'm looking for? An untextured data mine that just looks like an amalgamation of a bunch of the bosses. What else was here? Just quick ones that I don't really have very inspiring answers for. Oh, if you had one dish or drink from Eorzea Cafe, what would you get? Dude, I don't even remember half those things. The Raubon beef stew. I'm gonna go with that one because it had angry Raubon face made of seaweed on it. If you could bring any 14 characters to Smash Bros, dude, Smash Bros netcode was so disappointing. I don't even want to think about Smash Bros. As cool as it is to see some of the characters that make it in there, it is really hard for me to be excited about Smash Brothers. And other than that, I don't think there's anything else. I think there was one or two other ones that I went past before. That I guess with the most recent patch notes, it was kind of already addressed. But yeah, I don't really have much of anything else with this, so I think that's going to be a wrap for me on this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. So thank you everyone who asked a question this week. If you have a question, be sure to put it in the comment section of the video below. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy would definitely be the best way for me to identify it, but it's not absolutely necessary. I will read through every comment anyway and double check. Again, thank you to our patrons of darkness, and all of you who tune in every week to Mondays with Mr. Happy. Now I'm going to go try to get some work done because I found out in between all that Raid Night is going to be canceled because of some scheduling conflict. So it means I actually have some time to get some work done. So thank you everyone for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.